Welcome back, everybody. For years, those in the legacy media and establishment in the Democrat parties have been pushing the issue of climate change as a looming danger over the heads of Americans, and it could only be solved if we all made an effort to be more eco-friendly. And who better to tell you how to do that than the government, of course. But finally, that has all changed with the arrival of the second Trump administration. Even the New York Times is conceding that the old climate change messaging playbook simply doesn't work anymore. So are we seeing the collapse of the global climate change narrative? Joining us now to discuss that is Climate Depot publisher and former senior staff at the U.S. Senate Environment and Public Works Committee, Marc Morano. Marc, great to see you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Amanda. Happy to be here today.
I know you know as well as anyone in this town that it takes a lot for a political ideology, regardless of persuasion, whether Republican or Democrat, to abandon a cause. Is that really what we're seeing right now, or are they just thinking, well, it's not working right now, we'll come back to this later?
Yeah, I don't know if they've abandoned it yet, but they are, I guess you'd use the word, they're reeling. They're on their heels. This has been such a shock, even to me. I mean, I've been at this since 1992 when George H.W. Bush went to the Rio Earth Summit, and I was opposed to it back then. And I started working for Rush Limbaugh, the television show. I never thought a Republican presidency would ever push back on the narrative. And I got to say, other than Donald Trump himself and one other official really in his first term, no one really did. Trump 2.0 just demolishing the narrative, crushing it. But not only that, doing it with permanence, going after the endangerment finding, going after the heart of it with the UN climate treaty process. And what happens? Now you have the New York Times quoting the Earth Day founder, Dennis Hayes. And I just love this quote. Everything I've worked for in my entire professional life has gone down the toilet in the last 6 months. This is in the pages, the hollowed pages of the gray old lady, the New York Times. There's something special about Trump 2.0 that is exceeding beyond leaps and bounds anything Trump 1.0 achieved in this area. And the New York Times is recognizing it. They even go so far, the New York Times, as talking about how polling, people don't rank climate as a concern.
Yeah,
they're talking about a bleak time, and they're talking about the entire movement just struggling. Al Gore announced a few months ago that he's moving most of his climate evangelism and recruiting of apostles overseas. He's sort of given up on America. But don't fret. Overseas is like some fertile ground for Gore. Europe, I have an analysis shows that tide is turning decisively against net zero. This is the Trump effect. It's gone global, and now the great lady at the New York Times is acknowledging it. This is unprecedented times. Not going away, though, because you have Bill Gates, billionaires, international organizations, corporate media, academia, still going to be pushing it, but they're sort of going in a dormant stage at the moment.
So I think at the end of the day, the Al Gore climate change cry could be described as the boy who cried wolf too many times. But at the end of the day, yes, trillions of dollars were spent, our taxpayer monies, trillions of dollars spent on technologies and capabilities that didn't deliver. So this has a really significant impact on all of us. It's part of the debt that we've run up over the last decade or two. Do you think Americans are beginning to understand the financial cost of what Al Gore and his acolytes did to the American public?
I mean, it was a literal lie from day one. If you can go back in the 90s, all the claims, Al Gore always said, it was a great business opportunity. He kept saying for entrepreneurs. No, it was a great business opportunity for people like John Podesta and Al Gore and Richard Branson and all these others, and everyone who cashed in on all this green cash. At one point, it was CBS News reported that Gore was a huge beneficiary of Obama's green stimulus. So a lot of people made a lot of money on this. But essentially, do people realize it? I think people are realizing there was magical thinking. There was a World War II historian who talked about the magical thinking in Germany and the Soviet Union, when it comes to economics. And I think that's exactly what green ideology was. Oh, we're going to go to solar and wind, and it's going to be cheaper, and we can just decommission and get rid of all the fossil fuels, and we're going to run a green. First of all, that wasn't green. And second of all, that was all a fantasy. People are now realizing it. And we're realizing it with the offshore wind. I mean, you've never seen liberals convert to climate skeptics faster than the ones who live in Martha's Vineyard and along the New Jersey coast and along New York. I was out there on a boat out on off the coast of Martha's Vineyard, 50 miles off, protesting the wind farms that were out there. We were out there with San Francisco liberals who had trans activist signs. We were out there with commercial fishermen. People realize this was a fraud. They realize all the money we've spent. I think it's going to be very hard to get this kind of momentum as a green movement back, and a future president, AOC or Gavin Newsom, should that ever happen, because I just think the Trump administration has done such a great job with the narrative and the realization. People have been red-pilled. COVID helped a lot. You can go look at people like Joe Rogan. You can look at people like RFK Jr., Naomi Wolf, and they all were, oh, well, NASA says climate, what must be true. Once COVID happened, that was the equivalent of saying, well, Fauci says it, so it must be true. Skeptics were born across the progressive left, and I think that is what no one is really accounting for. You could put on Russell Brand as another name. This is a guy who was all into climate change, and now they're all like, well, like RFK said it best. It's been hijacked by the World Economic Forum and the United Nations for totalitarian control of society. RFK just dropped it. He said, I'm not going to talk about climate change anymore. Yeah. That is shocking. And I think that kind of thing has a huge trickle down all the way to the average voter, people who don't even follow politics.
If we only had focused on clean air and clean water and simple things that matter to people, we would have saved ourselves trillions of dollars. It's crazy.
Trillions, yeah. And the thing is, we're now getting back to where global warming was once hijacked the entire environmental movement. Now we can actually go back to clean air, clean water, focus on toxic waste cleanup. East Palestine, we can do lead in the drinking water, because we're not focused on racist highways and environmental equity and all of this nonsense about, environmental justice, and let's put in, more solar panels and wind that don't produce energy. Yeah. Less than 4% of energy came from it all. It was nuts. I can't believe they got as far as they did.
They did.
Well, Mark, I, for one, cannot believe that there was even any dry ground for you to protest on Martha's Vineyard because of the rising sea levels. But at any rate, I'm glad you got it done.
Found some sand, apparently.
We were out in a small boat, and I had a 1980s Radio Shack megaphone out there.
So I love it. No Greta Thunberg tactics here, just the nitty-gritty. Climate Depot publisher and former senior staff at the U.S. Senate Environment and Public Works Committee, Marc Morano. Thanks so much for your valuable time today, and some final thoughts coming up on the other side of this break.
That was fun.